Welcome back. Welcome back to Morning Joe. Live look at Washington, and right in there, President Trump apparently is watching Morning Joe again. Donald, you really ought to find something else to do in the morning. It's just not healthy. He's tweeting about the show this morning, saying that there's anger on the show. My anger? No, I'm not angry. Don't worry, Donald, I'm not angry. I'm sad and disgusted when pathetic politicians don't stand up to your racism. They're too afraid to. That's sad, and that's unbelievably pathetic to watch, and it's really bad for our country. So just make sure you understand the emotion you're seeing here. It's really sad, and what I'm saying is what's happening with those who suck up to you to the point where they throw away everything they've worked for all their lives, including the trust their voters have in them, the trust that other members of the Senate and Congress have in them, that they cannot be a true friend and stand up for a friend when they are being called a racist by the President of the United States. Let's talk about Mark Meadows and how he's too busy sucking up to you than being the friend that Elijah Cummings was to him when he was called a racist during a hearing about you, by the way. And Mark Meadows cried like a baby when he was called a racist and had these crocodile tears in front of the entire committee, and Elijah stood with him and said, "You're not a racist." And Mark Meadows cannot return that favor to Elijah Cummings because he's too busy being afraid of you. That's sad and that's pathetic. So that's what you're seeing here, Donald, as you're tweeting away with your little thumbs. So again, unlike Mark Meadows, just for the record, we're not afraid of you. New emails obtained by NBC show how the Trump administration now wants to use border agents to conduct the initial asylum interview for migrants trying to come into the country in an effort to toughen up the process. NBC News correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now with the exclusive details. Julia?
So, Mika, we knew that it was a plan starting in the late spring to use more border agents and to train them to do asylum interviews rather than asylum officers. And at the time, they said it's just a matter of manpower. We have so many asylum seekers crossing the border. We need more people. So they started to train 60 border agents. We now know that those border agents have been conducting the interviews and that Stephen Miller is interested in one thing about their performance, and that is their passage rate. How many asylum seekers did they give a pass in their original interview? And he wants to know if that number is lower than asylum officers. He wants to know that because it has long been held, Stephen Miller believes, that asylum officers are softer, that they would give more of these immigrants a pass than a border agent who would be more focused on law and order. And he even asked whether or not these border agents were going to stop having asylum officers looking over their shoulders. That's a direct quote from emails we obtained where a National Security Council official is telling people from Customs and Border Protection ahead of a meeting with Stephen Miller, you better come prepared with this data because he's going to want to know this. The other thing this official said at the end is right here. He says, "My mantra has persistently been presenting aliens with multiple unsolvable dilemmas to impact their calculus for choosing to make the arduous journey to begin with." That tells you everything you need to know, Mika, about this administration's policy towards immigration. That all of the things we've seen, whether it be having asylum seekers wait in Mexico, having asylum seekers have to claim asylum in Guatemala or Mexico on their way here, turning people around at the border, all of that is built. Doesn't really matter whether or not it sticks or whether courts allow it. It's just to add another obstacle in their way. And really, a comment like that could get them in trouble in court because you're not supposed to be developing immigration policies specifically to deter, to make life harder for immigrants. This was already a problem going back into the 90s. And since then, immigration policy has tried to focus on securing borders and having laws that are followed, but not just deterring immigrants through policies that are cruel or would somehow make them suffer.